Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to the first ever edition to Cinema Today. And there's only one place to kind of start and finish on, really, and that's Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home sums up entertainment and cinema today. I could complain about it, I could bitch about it, but it is what it is. I said this on one of my other videos yesterday. You know, people used to bitch against Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Van Damme, the strongmen of the 80s and the 90s, but it's what us youngsters enjoyed. And it doesn't matter how many times the older generation says, in my day it was a lot better, and I do that all the time. I think what was better about growing up watching movies was the variety. We lack variety today. But being an old bastard, I am going to kind of start on the negative side. And I want to balance here when we look at Spider-Man No Way Home. Very successful movie, could hit 2 billion globally when it all is said and done. When you look at Spider-Man No Way Home, it lacks originality. The MCU doesn't seem very good at fleshing out characters. I mean, they were at the beginning in phase 1, but that's changed. Ever since the first Avengers, they've become utterly lazy. Let's look at the MCU Spider-Man. We have Homecoming and No Way Home. A bland, uninteresting, mediocre first couple of movies. I will say that Far From Home is an improvement on Homecoming. I think the Mysterio thing and what he does to Peter is a lot better. Let me be absolutely clear. Tom Holland is a great boy. He's a great talent. He's a really good Spider-Man. And in Civil War, he's an awesome Spider-Man. And I thought, wow. I mean, Tobey Maguire's always been my favourite, and the Raimi movies have always been my favourite Spider-Man live-action entries. But I thought, wow, this guy, if he stays on this level. But why was he on this level? Because of the Russo brothers. And as I said many times on my channel before, it's my belief, my passionate belief, that the Russos should have been in charge of Spider-Man. Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, and this movie. Because if the Russos were involved, there never would have been a need for a No Way Home. There never would have been a need to bring more popular, better fleshed out versions of Spidey and his, you know, rogues gallery of villains. Spider-Man No Way Home for 45 minutes is the same dour, mediocre piece of crap we've seen in Homecoming and Far From Home. And it only gets interesting, guess when? When Raimi's universe lands in the MCU and Mark Webb's universe lands in the MCU. Before that, it's shit. The people celebrating this film are celebrating things from the past that did a job much better. People will tell me that Andy Garfield's Spider-Man movies aren't very good, and he's a good Spidey, but the rest of it's crap. I disagree. In the first Amazing Spider-Man film, you know, Mark does something that no one's ever done before. We see an introduction, a flashback of Peter's parents, and they're involved in this conspiracy. It makes Spider-Man's backstory a lot more interesting. Now, I haven't read Spider-Man comics, so I don't know if that's actually what happened in the comics, because we've never really heard much about his parents in live action. So that was really good, and it was a great place to start. I am not an Amazing Spider-Man 2 hater. I think it's a very, very good, interesting film, and it has consequences. But despite the fact that Spider-Man No Way Home, you know, is literally just bringing in fleshed out more popular versions of these characters than the MCU have given us, there are consequences for Tom Holland's Peter Parker Spider-Man. In fact, you know, people are loving Tom Holland in this movie. But still, I think Tobey Maguire steals the show. I think that Willem Dafoe steals the show. And even Al Molina, my good friend Al Molina, by the way, is a brilliant Doc Ock. And again, for me, they're the highlights of this movie. But what they do really well in this film is they decide to strip the stuff. They stripped away the stuff that didn't work in the first two movies by the time we get to the end of it. Because and this is a spoiler, so fuck off if you haven't seen the movie, but at the end of the movie, you know, everyone has forgotten Peter. Now, this could pretty much mean that Ned and MJ are not going to be in the future movies, or they may just have cameos going forward. I personally believe that Zendaya's MJ and Ned haven't really worked for me. I haven't embraced them. Now, I know a lot of people love them, and that's cool, but they haven't worked for me. So there's an opportunity here. I'm not saying this is definitely going to happen, but he can now be free of those characters, and, you know, we're going to the college years where he's meeting new people. That's the whole point, isn't it? So there can be new characters and a new love interest and things like that. So we'll see what they do with that. But Spider-Man No Way Home really sums up cinema today. Now, I think about the other films in movie theatres today, this weekend, and they flopped. They didn't flop because they're bad movies. They flopped because nobody's interested. No one wants those movies. People just want fantasy, immersive experiences, and capes. That's what people want. Not everyone, but the masses. And the masses have always been king in, you know, cinema consumption. You know, whether we had films like, you know, Spielberg's E.T., Close Encounters, Jaws, things like that, and people trying to copy those movies unsuccessfully. So that's where we are today. June, big hit, even though it had a day-and-date release as well. Huge hit, over 400 million, which is great for the era that we live in with COVID, and because it had a day-and-date. So very successful, an immersive movie. People like that, right? People like that back in the Lord of the Rings days as well. But then you've got the other side of the coin, where you've got the MCU, which is making shitloads of money basically by cameos, Easter eggs, and, you know, things like that, rather than good storytelling. All people, when you go and see an MCU movie, it's quick, it's easy. I don't think they have much rewatch value, but they're quick and easy, and you go on to the next movie. That's what it's about now. And this is what the DC Extended Universe is trying to do, and what it needs to do starting from next year. But that's cinema today. Spider-Man No Way Home. And you can criticise the pattern of it, and you can look at the box office and actually hate it. I always laugh at how excited ordinary journalists get and ordinary fans get about box office, seeing that these big multi-trillion-dollar corporations are making so much money off of us, and everyone's bragging about it. I know why they're bragging about it, because they want it to continue. This is great for geeks and nerds. This is something like Spider-Man No Way Home, which is a good film, don't get me wrong. But for me, it only leaps into action once we see the stuff that we've already seen from other movies. For me, Raimi's Spider-Man was the best. Tobey Maguire may look a lot older in No Way Home, but he's still the Spider-Man I fell in love with in the first Spider-Man and then in the second Spider-Man. He's still that guy. He's definitely the most popular Spider-Man. I know everyone on the internet is calling for an Amazing Spider-Man 3. I would like to see that. I think Andy deserves that. But I want to see Sam Raimi get the Spider-Man 4 movie he always deserved. And even this conversation that we're having sums up cinema today, where it's about cameos and Easter eggs, and that's what it's all about. What originality does Spider-Man No Way Home actually have? It's got a good core message, it's got a good core plot, and in fact what makes me happy about the success of No Way Home is it is the way it always should have been. Spider-Man has always been Marvel Comics' #1 character, and now in the movie universe, just look at the box office, it's Marvel Studios and Sony's #1 character, like he was in the good old days with Tobey Maguire. What a surprise, all of a sudden Tobey Maguire returns and Spider-Man is Marvel's #1 live action movie, live action character. Have a think about that for a minute. Don't get a headache though. So, you know, the irony isn't lost on me. So we're going to be getting a lot of Spider-Man. This is what this means. But this is typical of Feige and Marvel Studios, because as soon as they kept on seeing the excitement for Andy and Peter being in this film. What did they do? Andy and Peter. Andy and Toby being in this movie, what did they do? They announced they were doing Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness reshoots to put some cameos in there. I wonder what kind of cameos. Will we see Toby and Andy again in that movie? It would not surprise me, because it is, don't forget, it's the Multiverse of Madness. So what other cameos would you do? Or has he gone deeper than that? Is he persuaded Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Logan to cameo in this Multiverse of Madness movie, and people like that? It wouldn't surprise me. So Feige now knows that the multiverse is pure gold to bring back live action Marvel iterations that long gone that people love. And that, my friends, is cinema today. This is where we are now, right? Where films where you may see independent films, really good independent films, flop in the cinema, or films you expect to do well won't. And this is why there's no variety in entertainment today, because there isn't the business for it. People are just not interested en masse. And it isn't going to change for a very long time. If you think there's going to be superhero fatigue anytime soon, you're wrong. But the audience hasn't changed in the sense of they won't watch crap because it's a cape. Now, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is a good film, but it's nothing really that we haven't seen from Gunn before, and I think maybe that's why audiences didn't rush to see it. We know what people want from cinema today, and it is cameos, Easter eggs, and appearances. Just something easy to consume, and that's what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is. This is the difference from the MCU to the Snyderverse. The Snyderverse was complex. It took itself seriously. I love the Snyderverse. I think it's great. But audiences today don't want anything too complex. Now, Dune is the opposite, but it isn't a cape movie. It's an immersive sci-fi movie. You get a different audience, but they can still make money. But nothing's making more money than the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you know, you're saying, Mick, you're talking about the money, but what about the entertainment value? Well, I'm sorry, it is about the money. It's not necessarily about making great art. You look at something like Todd Phillips' The Joker, who made over $1 billion, and you think, well, there's an audience for that kind of thing then. Why wasn't the Snyderverse as popular as that? No Snyderverse movie made $1 billion. Why? Because it didn't appeal to the masses. It did bring a lot of mass audiences into it, and they made solid good money, all three of those movies. But we're talking about the Joker, and people liked the actor. People were very supportive of the actor playing the Joker. It hit their imagination. The trailers looked good. People didn't like Jared Leto as the Joker. Zack Snyder got a lot of things right with the DC Extended Universe, but something didn't hit with the mass audience, and that was the problem. And this is why the DCEU is being rebooted in the Flash movie. Whatever we say, I can tear apart cinema today. Cinema today is in two parts. You get the virtue signalling movies that kind of talk about representation and inclusion that trigger people, and you get a movie like Spiderman No Way Home, where the same people who virtue signal decide to do a movie where they don't virtue signal. It's, you know, the irony's not lost on me that a movie character that's owned by Sony, Spider-Man, doesn't do so much of the virtue signaling because it's Sony, and we know who owns Sony. So what's the more successful thing to do? It's obvious. It's the Spider-Man No Way Home route, because the Spider-Man No Way Home route doesn't insult audiences. Spider-Man No Way Home gives audiences what they want. It's given today's audience what they want, because whatever we say about this generation of audiences, and I can criticise them till the cows come home, they went there. They got a buzz from seeing it, and they're going back to see it again and again and again. It's a bit like The Force Awakens. It made $2 billion. Now, people may criticise the sequel trilogy, but The Force Awakens was exciting because it asked a lot of questions, and It had a lot of potential, and that potential was wasted from the moment J.J. Abrams and Disney decided for J.J. not to do the next 2 movies and allow them to go down the direction that they did. But I think The Force Awakens kind of excited people in the way No Way Home did. Why? Because it introduced new characters, good new characters, by the way, that I really liked, but it brought back the originals as well. So it's a No Way Home scenario. So people loved it and saw the potential. So this is the kind of thing that people want to see. But just because you're bringing the old and you're mixing it in with the new, it doesn't mean you can be creatively bankrupt. And I don't think Spider-Man No Way Home is creatively bankrupt. Really, it lets the original fleshing out by Raimi and Mark Webb do the talking. I mean, I'm going to give you a spoiler here, so again, go away. But that scene when Doc Ock and Toby's Spidey, Peter, are reunited, and you've got that old Raimi music, it's emotional. It hits hard. Now, they're the type of things that we didn't really get in The Force Awakens. That was part of their mistake, not putting the originals together. So I think this film really gets it right and sets up a lot of great potential. And you kind of feel that this is the future of film now, that film will go back to entertaining audiences as much as it can, because divisive reactions may get you attention, but ultimately people hate you for it, and you're just not going to make the money. How do I feel about film today? Well, I don't watch many films today. Although they're there, I know most of them are politically motivated and I'm bored. But I am interested in capes and immersive experiences. That's my bag. So in that element, I'm excited that we're getting all these superheroes and all these immersive experiences like Dune. I think it's a good time. But the only problem with entertainment today and cinema today, we lack the variety. This has been Cinema Today. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again maybe tomorrow if I get a few views for this video for more Cinema Today. Until then, goodbye.